Welcome, everyone, to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove, and a surprise special guest, the super producer, Jason.
Greetings, everyone. Back in action.
Back in action. Yeah, it's tough. You know, our recording schedule sometimes gets a little dicey, and you can't join us because you know you have a pretty tough job, and I'm lying completely. You don't.
Yeah, I have to do real men's work. Yes.
Oh God. Oh gosh. And, yes, to all of our listeners, that's a complete lie from Jason, the producer. So it's a complete lie. But there are times, you know, we kind of touch on it that you're not available when our guests are available. So that's the way it works. So you know, before we bring our guest on, I do want to remind everybody that if you want to get a hold of us because you got a story or you just want to send us a nice email, which, Jason, we've got a couple nice emails. I don't know if you heard me and the Howler talking about the email that I got about the Canadian lady who was hoping we would crash.
Ah, yes. What? I had to chuckle at that. Yeah. I was producing that episode. Yeah.
She was hoping we would crash, not so that we would die, but so the Canadian women up where she was from could
they can keep
us.
Yeah.
Keep us as their slave labor or something. I don't know. But it was
probably to mow all the yards.
It was flattering that somebody thought enough of me and the Howler that they thought it'd be fun to have us as visitors.
I'm sure the Howler, he probably started packing his bags too.
Oh, jeez. Well, I just want to remind everybody, if you do want to get a hold of us and send us a nice message or complain about something, or if you got I'd rather have an experience. I'd rather if you share a story with us. So,
and if you don't want to do that, at least give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast.
Oh gosh, here goes Jason shilling for ratings. Okay, but you can find us on Facebook at the From the Shadows podcast Facebook page or our forum page, which is After the Shadows. You can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author. You can find our From the Shadows podcast Instagram page, or just go to our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. Hit the contact button and you can send us an email. It comes straight to me. You know, and I want to thank everybody. I don't have the list of all of our new Patreons, but in a couple episodes, I will get that list and thank everybody personally who's decided to come and support us through Patreon and check out some of the cool content that we've been putting up there. An extra, so far we're doing an extra
Howler and an extra episode every month. Yes.
Yeah, every month, and then at a certain level, and then at another level, you get the episodes commercial free, and usually a day early because I just go ahead and put them up so I don't forget to do them the day of. So you know, so I do that. So, but we appreciate everybody checking us out, and like Jason has said before, because last week, and I do it because this is going to be, you know, me and Jason talking here when this comes out. The episode we had last week with Linnell from Philadelphia, it seemed to really creep everybody out. There was some really great paranormal stories, and Linnell was a great guest, and I got tons of messages. So if you're listening to this just because it's a Bigfoot episode, go back and check out last week's episode with Linnell from Philadelphia. And but don't do it in the dark, and don't do it by yourself because it won't turn out well. You're going to get scared.
It'll put the shivers in your livers for sure.
Shivers in your livers. But like we told everybody, if you come across an episode you really like, share it with your friends. You know, so there's every place that you listen to an episode, there's a button that you can share it through a text message or on your social media. And that would be awesome because we love to have new listeners join the old listeners and become a member of the From the Shadows podcast family. So it's kind of cool seeing all the new people here the last couple of weeks. So
that is wonderful. I love that. That's more perspectives. That's more ears on the show. And what I like about it is it helps to grow the show, because the way this algorithm is set up, when you share it, it makes the algorithm think that we're real popular and you like it, and it'll introduce to a lot more people. A lot more people.
Is that Jason secretly wants a cologne called Algorithm so that he can seem like he's more popular? How about that? Like, I use Algorithm.
We'd have to tell the judge about that one, right?
Oh God, believe me, he doesn't need any more cologne. All right, we're so far.
All
off.
right,
Okay.
let's get down to business.
So our guest is somebody from time to time I go and through some of the Facebook Bigfoot pages, and I came across this gentleman's post about an experience he had, and I reached out to him, and we started talking, and he's gracious enough to come on the show and share some really great stories. So, Steve, welcome to the From the Shadows podcast. If you haven't already hung up and said, I'm not hanging out with these guys, but
I'm right here, partner. I'm right here. Look, you guys are my kind of people. You hear what I'm saying? Yes, sir.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me. I really do.
Well, Steve, why don't we just get into it? Why don't you kind of set the stage here and tell everybody when you had your experience, and then we'll just kind of go from there. Some of the other things that have happened to you over the years.
Sure. Well, I reckon the best way to start this is, I'm out here in Louisiana, and I come out the military out of Fort Polk, Louisiana, back in the early 80s. And I served throughout the 70s and such in the military and the Army. I was a airborne ranger and was first and proud to serve, and I'll tell you what, it was an experience. But go ahead and cut to the chase on it. Basically, I want to say this starting out with, because I think it's important to understand this to kind of give it a little bit of contrast. I never believed in these creatures existed prior to this experience. I'm going to tell you all about. I never thought they existed. I actually laughed at folks that claim they've seen one. But when you see it yourself, you can't deny what you saw. And you'll understand more what I'm saying about that when I go into this. I was stationed at Fort Polk, Louisiana, back in 1975 in the military. I had a girlfriend that lived outside of Hamden, Arkansas, on a farm, about 10 miles outside there, between there and Ruston, Arkansas. And so on weekends, I'd go up about 4.5 hour drive from Fort Polk. So on weekends, on Friday evenings, when we got off work, I'd head that way, and I'd stay with her and her family on the farm. And two reasons. Number one, because I wanted to get up there, love farm life, that kind of thing. And I help her daddy with, building fence and tending to the cattle and chickens and the hogs and all that kind of thing. I love that kind of deal. But also because I get off a post, and you're in the military on weekends when you're off, they got what's called detail. And if you're on post and you're off and they need someone for detail, guess who they picking? So I made sure I hightailed it. Yes, sir. I made sure I hightailed it to Arkansas, or anywhere. But every weekend I went up there, and the farm was out in the middle of the woods. It was like I am right now. I live way out in the woods. And like I said earlier, it's 5.5 miles up my back door to the swamps in the next house. Well, it's kind of like where she was set at over there in her farm. They had a little bigger place than I did. They had 250 acres on their farm, and it was settled out there in the middle of nowhere. Well, it was one particular Friday night. I'd gotten in, and her granny cooked for us all the time. Her granny was an amazing cook. Gal was about 70 years old, this old country gal, Pentecostal gal. And I remember her, she had her hair all up in a bun and long dress she'd wear. I mean, that's what her belief was, and that's fine. That's fine. So, but she can cook. And I'm talking about, son, make you want to slap somebody. She was that good. I mean, what? So, it was some groceries. Are you hearing me?
So let's be honest before we start.
Yeah.
The real reason you drove that far every weekend was for the cooking. Nothing else. It was for the
There you go.
great.
Well, that's the truth right there. I mean, that gal I was seeing, she was pretty nice, but she couldn't cook like Granny. I'll tell you right now, if I was going after older women, I'd be chasing Granny. You hear me? But I'll tell you what, she was a great cook. And I mean, a country fried chicken. I'm talking about homemade biscuits that you can, I mean, with sausage gravy that just make you want to go ahead and fall out. But in any case, this Friday night we finished eating and we was all hunkered down in a den. When I say all of us, I'm talking about my girlfriend and me, her mom and daddy, and then her two brothers. We're in a den and watching TV. Her granny was in the kitchen washing dishes. Now, out back, the back door was in the kitchen, so out there it goes for miles and miles to the woods out there. There's nothing but woods out there. And she screams. Granny screams bloody murder. So all of a sudden we just jump and run to see what's going on, how she is, was it a seer about her. And I was the first one there, and I got to the kitchen door, son. I almost cut a flip over her. She was sitting right there in the hind end on the floor in the doorway of the kitchen. And she's pointing at the kitchen window screaming, I seen it again, I seen it again. And I assumed my military mind, it was an intruder, some fella trying to break in. But her family knew what it was, because evidently it'd been around before a couple of times, hence why she said she's seen it again. But no one let me in on it yet. I assume it was an intruder. My girlfriend's daddy yells, grab a gun. He had gun racks down the hallway. So we all armed up, grabbed weapons, went out the back door. My girlfriend and her mama stayed with Granny to go ahead and tend to her because she was pretty shook up. And I remember this like it was yesterday. One thing, is just when you have a traumatic experience, you tend to remember those things, details like it happened yesterday. It don't matter if it happened 55, 65 years ago. I know during my career in law enforcement, when I would deal with people and talk to them about situations and traumatic experiences, they remember details years later. I mean, it's just the way the mind works. So I remember this so well, and these things really made an impact on my life. So I remember the details. I mean, even though it's been, 47 years ago. In any case, we ran out the back door armed. I remember me and her daddy went to the left. Her brothers went to the right. Like I said, the girls stayed inside to tend to Granny. Went out there. It was 9:30 at night, but it was a very bright moon. Now, if you understand, you've seen bright moons before where it's so bright outside, it's like daylight. Literally like daylight. You can see across the pasture, across the fields, real bright. You can make out details and everything. Like it's almost sunlight, just a little bit dimmer.
Yep.
That's the kind of night this was. And so I want that understanding right there. We can see things. I can see the cattle clear across the pasture. And they were all hunkered up together at the other end of the pasture, and they were cutting up, which, of course, was a sign they were spooked. That's what cattle do when they're spooked. They hunker up together, and they start cutting up. Well, of course, that could have been a panther, a coyote, whatever, any kind of predator. Go ahead and do that. I didn't know. Again, in my mind, I'm hunting for an intruder, a feller that tried to break in. Her daddy was ahead of me, but he would not tell me what was going on. What kind of lit the cat out the bag for me that we wasn't going after a regular feller was the 3 hunting dogs he had. He had 3 full-size hunting dogs that were blue ticks. And those dogs right there trained to tree squirrels, trained to go ahead and run rabbits, run deer. They were under the porch whining, scared to death. That rung my bell. Now I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's a feller. They're going to be, you hear them dogs cutting up, running after him, running him through the woods. Mm-hmm. They was under there crying, whining. That told me there's something out here that ain't supposed to be. And so I kind of didn't know I was going after still, but in the same token, I knew it was something big and bad. So I caught up to her daddy, and I went ahead and come behind him, and he had a flashlight in the 410, and I was behind him with a 12 gauge. We went going, and we come up towards this corner post. Now, this corner post, and I'm trying to give you the picture of this so y'all understand. The corner post was attached to a dividing fence, ran off the corner post. The dividing fence was the fence that was divided the pasture from a 50-acre swamp. The 50-acre swamp was just massive. It was thick. It was bad, full of briars. I mean, it was bad. Okay, so he didn't want the cattle going in there, so he built a fence over there, helped him build that fence. And it was a 5-foot fence. I know that for a fact because it was built out of 4-foot cattle panel with such a barbed wire over it. It's about 5 foot high. And we come close to that corner post, and then we caught a smell, a bad stench. I'm talking about it sounded like old matted piss. I mean, it was terrible. It'd make you want to gag. And then all of a sudden, we jump something up. And when I say jump something up, I don't know if either one of y'all fellas deer hunt or anything, but I've jumped many deer up. When they jump up from a bush or whatever, they make a racket.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, deer out here ain't but 120, 150 pounds, ain't real big, but they still make a racket. This sounded like a damn 2,000-pound rhino cutting through the limbs. I'm in the thicket going ahead and making a mess of a racket. It startled us, and it was twisting and turning, breaking limbs and everything. Then all of a sudden, this is the point when my world came to a complete, utter stop. Everything that I was taught to believe, this point on, to this point where I was 19 years old, with out there with my girlfriend's daddy, I questioned everything I was taught to believe right then. And this gives me chills even saying this, fellas, because I go back to the emotion that hit me when I seen this. Not 25 foot in front of us, this critter that was making that racket in that thicket jumped that fence right in front of us, 25 foot in front of us. Now, it's bright as almost daylight, and we see this thing. It crouched down when it hit the ground over that fence. Didn't touch that damn fence. Didn't touch it. We checked later on for hair, and barbed wire was no hair in it. That's how it cleared that fence like a damn track star. It's crouched down, and then it stood up. And when it stood up, we saw the size and mass of this thing. 25 foot from us, and 25 feet ain't a whole lot of distance I'm telling you about from you and something like this. This thing stood up about 8 foot tall, at least 8 foot tall, had to have been every bit of 700 pounds, and was covered in long, dark, stringy hair. And it was side now, it was flank of us. When I say flank, it landed sideways to us. So we didn't see its face straight on. I seen its profile of its face, but I seen its body well enough. It was straight up like a man. It was massive. The muscle structure in this thing was unbelievable. It's like looking at Lou Ferrigno, who played the Incredible Hulk. If you can imagine him about 3 foot taller, about 400 pounds heavier, covered in hair, you got what I'm looking at right now. And as soon as it stood up, it didn't attack us. It did not try to be aggressive. It ran away from us, and it ran across that pasture. So I'm thinking, in my mind, is going 100 miles an hour trying to figure out what this thing is. Same time, I'm thinking, it must be scared of us as much as we scared of it. Because I was froze, son. I was froze. Now, this thing runs across the pasture. We watch it run like a man. Didn't fall to all fours at any time. It ran like a track star. Long stride, arm swing was unbelievable as it ran away from us. We watched this thing run. It was no bear. I'm going to tell you right now. When I started talking about this wasn't very, very recently. I started talking about this. I kept it inside me for over 40 years. But as far as I've been asked by some people, was it a bear? No, it was no bear. I've seen many bear. I've seen grizzlies. I've seen black bear. We call sugar bears out here, about 4 or 5 foot tall. But I've seen all kind of bears. There's some definite differences between a bear structure, body structure, and this creature. Number one, a bear has some sort of a snout. This creature, its profile, had a human face, human nose, okay? No snout. Number two, a bear's got sloped shoulders. This thing had broad, massive shoulders, like a bodybuilder. So that was, and again, threw it off like a bear. Then the main thing was a bear can stand up like a man, and a bear can walk like a man too. It can do it. I've seen them do it. But a bear cannot run like a man. Its hip structure and leg structure won't allow it to. It has to fall to all fours to run. So this thing running that track star across again, that was no bear. And no one convinced me it was. It ran across the pasture, went ahead, and it broke, and it crashed through the cattle gate. Now, we had built that cattle gate. I know exactly where that cattle gate was built up. That cattle gate was made there. Of course, bring his tractor inside there and such, go ahead and cut the grass and all that and work the land. But the cattle gate was made out of 2x6s of oak 2x6s. And I don't know if you know how hard oak wood is, but I'm going to tell you right now, try to break some sometime. Number one, 2x6s, not 2x4s, 2x6s oak. Wow. You go ahead and take a 2x6 of oak wood, try to break that. Number one, it's heavy. And number two, you can be working on it for a while trying to break it, I promise you. This thing crashed to that and splintered it. We didn't know that till the next morning. We pulled a recon and went and looked, but from what we saw as it ran through there, and when it broke through that and crashed to that cattle gate, trust me, we was not going to chase it. There was no way. But as soon as it crashed through that cattle gate, it went ahead and it roared. And it'll roar out that I've never heard in my life. And I've heard all kind of critters in these woods roar. I've never heard that roar since, except for one other time on a recording, and I'll tell you that in a little bit. But however, after that happened right there, we stopped. Her brothers come around the other side of the house. They come running. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that roar? I said, hear it. We done seen the damn thing, man. And so they said, you seen it? I said, yes, we seen it. Well, her daddy was shook up. He was shook up bad, and I had to calm him down. He said, oh, man, we don't know what to do. It's coming around here all the time. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, how to protect my family. I don't know what to do. And he was really falling apart. Now, this fella here is 40-something years old. I'm a 19-year-old soldier, okay? And I'm trying to hold my composure together, too. This is not something I was trained for in Fort Benning, Georgia Ranger School to go ahead and handle. I'm able to handle all. So I'm trying to figure out in my mind, what the hell did we just see? Mm-hmm. What is that? Well, so it comes around here every once in a while, and it peeks in the window at Granny and everything else. It's never tried to break in the house as far as ramming on the house or beating on something or going ahead and breaking the windows. It never tried to attack anybody. It just comes around. I reckon it's curious. That was the thought process on that. Well, as things kind of calmed down, her tallest brother was 6'4", so we got him to stand underneath the kitchen window for scale, because the house was up on pilings because they weren't too far from the river, and evidently every once in a while it floods, so they had it jacked up, and had him raise his hand up. And being 6'4", stretching his arm up, he can probably reach his fingertips about almost 7 foot in the air. And with that, he still could barely touch the bottom rim of that kitchen window. So that told us right there that whoever looked in that window had to been at least 8 foot tall or taller. You know, it was consistent with something that tall. So we calmed down a bit, talked about it, went to the house. By that point in time, Granny was calmed down a little bit, and I sat down with her. And I said, Granny, I said, look, I said, I ain't trying to go ahead and upset you. I said, by no means. But I'm just trying to understand what we just seen. She goes, you seen it? I said, yes, ma'am, we seen it. Now, we didn't see his face real good because it was flank of us. And we saw his profile. I didn't see his face straight on. I seen his body real well. I said, however, you seen his face good when looking in the window? She goes, I've seen his face really good a few different times in the past, too. I said, okay, if you don't mind me asking you, what did his face look like? She said it looked like a huge man's face. However, she said it was no man. And it had hair around its face, but no hair on its face, big nose, big mouth, and big red glowing eyes. Now, fellas, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not doubting. I never doubted Granny. I didn't doubt her a bit. This is an old Pentecostal woman. I've known how the Pentecostals are. They straight to the book, huh? Mm-hmm. So, I wasn't doubting her. However, red glowing eyes kind of threw me for a loop. That's vampire type stuff, right? So I didn't doubt her, but I said, okay, well, she saw that, and that's what she saw. I never saw its face, so I couldn't, but I'm just saying what she said. Now, the next day, we didn't sleep that night. I think you realize that. So that coffee pot stayed going all night long. But anyway, next morning we decided to pull a recon. We went out there in the daylight and looked around. We went back from the starting point. This thing's jumped the fence and checked, like I said, checked the barbed wire in that fence that jumped and didn't find any hair in it at all. We found footprints across pasture. Huge. They were huge. Now, I'm talking about I can put almost both my feet end to end together, okay, toe to heel, and dang near fit in that footprint. Not quite. My toes was hanging over, but I'm talking about my feet. So about, I'd say 18, 19 inches long was, and about 6 inches wide was that footprint. They were huge. This thing was massive. And then, so as we went down towards the cattle gate, examined it, and it was tore up. I mean, it was splintered. And there was hair in the barbed wire there. We found hair, mats of hair in there. Of course, this is back in 75. Understand, fellas, this is long before cell phones, long before computers or anything else. So we didn't have none of that back then. So we just did. I reckon it didn't dawn on us to keep the hair. I wish today I would have known computers are out now and DNA and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't have that back then. So we didn't see any purpose of it. At least I didn't, and I don't know if they kept it or not. But I didn't, but I wish to God I did grab a whole handful of that and kept it. I wish I would have. Stupid me. But anyway, that's hindsight. Then as we followed the tracks, it went on through, and it went, like I said, the swamp was full of, both sides of that pasture was swamp. And it went through it was thick sawtooth briar. I'm talking about they was thick. And if you know what sawtooth briars are, them briars and them thorns on them things is about 3 or 4 inches long. We call them, wait a minute, military, because when you're going through there on recons and such and maneuvers and they grab a hold of your leg and such, they say, wait a minute, you ain't going.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'll tell you what, and they stick you too. So even through all our combat fatigues. But in any case, in our TA-50. But so we didn't bother to go any further from that. And we sat down, and her daddy asked me, he said, look, I appreciate if you wouldn't talk about this. This is a small community, and back then Camden was a very small town. I don't know how big Camden is now. This is back in 75. Back then it was a very small community. And they were known there, in their church. They didn't want the word getting out. Folks laughing at them, ridicule, and that kind of thing. So I respected that. I did. I respected that. And I said, yes, sir. I said, don't worry about that. I'll keep it inside. I won't say a word. And I did. And I went back to post, and I didn't ever talked about it, never brought it up. I just put it back in my mind and wouldn't talk about it to anybody. And even though I come across a few other instances, but that was that's what I did. And I didn't talk about it for years. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to this because this is so close back to each other. I believe I told you this too, partner. I believe about 70. This is back in 75. Now in 76, I was at later part of 76. I was PCS to Europe, but prior to that happening, we had an incident happen on Fort Polk back in 76. And 1st and 40th Armor, which was an unarmed battalion, was going on maneuvers. Fort Polk at the time is a very huge installation. At the time, had over 8,000 troops stationed on it. And this is before the cutbacks government did to military installations and all that in the early 80s. But in any case, we had over 8,000 troops on the post and stationed there, several battalions. You got 15 battalions, each one, holding about 1,500 troops. You can pretty much do the math on that, how many troops you got all together, and that's not counting all the MP battalions we had and everything else out there, maintenance battalions and everything else. I'm just counting infantry, armor, and the those battalions there and stuff like that, single battalions. In any case, 1st and 40th was on maneuvers. They were armored battalion, tanks, APCs, howitzers, mobile. And they were going to Peace on Ridge. When we trained at all the time, it was called Peace on Ridge. Peace on Ridge was the far end of Fort Polk, and it tied into what was called Kisatchie National Forest. Kisatchie National Forest is a huge wildlife preserve and the biggest one in Louisiana, one of the biggest ones anyway, in the central part of Louisiana. And it's about 600,000 acres. I mean, it's massive. It's huge. And any case, there's been lots of sightings up there, lots of sightings. So it's no wonder they seen this thing. Any case, crossing the road, this is in daylight now, daytime, in front of the entire battalion. They see this huge creature, huge, massive creature cross the road, dirt road, middle of the woods. And you're talking about a lot of troops right now seeing it, not just one or two. Okay, the whole battalion. Matter of fact, the BC saw it, who was See, BC was battalion commander, full bird colonel. He went ahead and radioed back to the division commander, which was General Haldane at the time, post commander, and he told him. And when a colonel, full bird colonel, tells you, hey, we just seen this thing, I seen this creature, my troops seen this creature cross the road, trust me, that's division commander's fixing to take action. You understand what I'm saying? So he went ahead and he immediately issued an order to shut down Fort Polk, because back then, in them days, it was open post, meaning civilians can cross it, because they would use it going across there to Highway 28, Alexandria. It was a big shortcut, like a bypass for them. He ordered the post closed for 7 days, for a week. When that happened there, he deployed all units, had to go out there to Fort Polk, all through the woods, Fort Polk, Peace on Ridge, and everything. We had to go out there. I mean, we weren't shoulder to shoulder, but one battalion over here, one battalion over here, one battalion over here. We were spread everywhere and looking for this thing. We had a lot of woods to cover. And for that whole solid week, we was out there. No one was allowed in Fort Polk. No one but military personnel and authorized personnel, civilian personnel who were authorized otherwise. And that was it. All the gates was heavily guarded. And we went through there. Now I didn't see anything. And no one in my battalion saw anything. However, we heard that other battalions did see something. We heard a crash. We heard some noise. We went over, investigated it, found some deuce and a halves that were turned over and crushed. And a deuce and a half military truck is a big old transport truck. And these things they both were upside down and crushed. So whatever did that had to be some kind of a beast. I'm going to tell you right now. But we didn't see it. Like I said, we did not see it. But we heard it was captured. Now, that was in the grapevine. Was it true? Don't know. I can't say. And I'm the kind of person, if I don't know for a fact, I ain't going to say it. I'm just going to give you the idea that I don't know. And that's it. If I know it, I'm going to tell you I know. If I don't, I'm not going to say it. And I'm just that way, So, and that's his gospel. I ain't going to say it. In any case, so we were, after the week was over with, we were all brought to Honor Field, which was across Highway 10 from Fort Polk, and we were put over there by the division commander, the whole division. And we were over there, and he came out there, and he pretty much put it out to us. We ain't supposed to talk about it. We ain't supposed to do this. No word. He put all we call Billy Goat Hill was going towards Leesville, which is the town we all partied in, going to bars and stuff as soldiers. He put all Billy Goat Hill off limits. We couldn't go there for a long time because he didn't want none of the troops going ahead and letting Captain bag that something was seen over there. So that's why that was done. We talked amongst ourselves about it, but that's all we could do. But I heard that so many times before on different missions I've been on, stuff, TDY missions, that, you can't talk about it. You can't talk about this, can't talk about that. Got to sign Pharaoh documents and everything else. I mean, I've been through all that so many times. I was used to it, In any case, so that was an instance right there where I just, here's two things back to back. One I seen in Arkansas, and one I heard, but I didn't see, but seen the result of what it did at Fort Polk. So, and both within a year of each other. That really kind of caught me. Oh, man, look, what's going on? I didn't believe in these creatures. And now all of a sudden, now my whole world's upside down, and I have no choice but to believe in them. So I knew something was existing. Now, let me throw this out in the mix real quick. I told you I didn't talk about this for years. And I didn't. I kept it inside of me. I didn't tell my wife, didn't tell my sons for years. No one knew about it. One day, my wife's uncle, well, of course, I got married in 1984 when I came out of the military, stayed here in Louisiana, went ahead, and we live right here. We are right now and out here in the woods. My wife's uncle, his name was Lewis Gale, good feller. We became best friends and best hunting buddies. So we hunted together all the time. We was going squirrel hunting and deer hunting, hog hunting, everything out in the woods. And we did for years. Well, one particular day, I decided, well, you know what? We've hunted around here, hunted there, I said, Uncle Lewis, we got to go out there to Anacoca Swamp, and which is it's not too far from here, but it's a pretty hard terrain up there, a lot of hills, a lot of hollers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I knew he's 75 years old. I figured he probably wouldn't want to go because it's hard terrain. So I asked him, I said, well, you want to go? And he said, no, I ain't going there. You can go if you want, but I ain't going. I said, I figured it's too hard for you, Uncle Lewis. He said, no, ain't that. he said, I ain't going there because I've seen something there before and I ain't never going back. And I said, well, he got my curiosity up and said that. So I said, what'd you see? He said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, Uncle Lewis, I said, I understand. I said, but you got my curiosity up. Because when he said that, you know what it did to me? It jogged my memory about what I seen in Arkansas. Okay, so that's why I was kind of persistent on why I wanted him to hear what he had to say. He said, son, if I tell you what I seen up there, you're not going to want to hunt with me no more. And he said, and you're going to tell my niece, your wife, that I'm crazy. I'm a crazy old man. I said, no, sir, I won't do that. I said, honestly, I'm right here. I'm all ears. He said, you won't believe me? I said, Uncle Lewis, trust me when I say I'll believe you. He said, all right. Well, he opened up. He told me back in the 50s, him and a friend of his, who I know very, very well, named Milton Hickenbottom, lived across the road. And I know Milton very well. Of course, him and Uncle Lewis both now passed away, but I know Milton's sons real well. And we hunted together 2 or 3 years. Well, he said him and Milton was out there in Anacoca Creek, out in the swamp over there. And they was squirrel hunting. Well, when you go squirrel hunting, you get out there before daylight because as soon as the day breaks, you're looking up in the treetops, looking for the limbs start moving. That means them squirrels are bouncing right there and jumping from limb to limb, and you can get them. Hopefully it's not windy out so you can tell, that's you look for a still day. But anyway, they's out there right before daybreak, sitting on a hill outside the creek. And as soon as the day broke, they went ahead and they could make out different things. Looked across the creek, and on the white sandbar, about 100 foot from them, they seen this creature standing there. They knew it was a creature. They didn't know what it was. They knew it was a creature. And he said it was very big, very massive, very tall. And it reached up and it grabbed a hold of a limb coming off a bluff above it. And it just stood there looking at him, frozen, looking at him. And then finally it reared back and it let out a roar. Uncle Lewis said it made his head on his head almost pop off from his hair standing up. It scared him that much, and I can understand that. So he said, man, and they froze, and that thing turned around to it road, and it roared, and he said it stepped up on the bluff, and it went off in the swamp, and it was gone. Well, they waited a while. They didn't want to get over there. They wanted to make sure it was gone because it scared the hell out of them. They crossed the creek, went over there, seen the footprints in the sandbar, and they looked over there, and that limb come off that bluff was about 12 foot in the air. He said that thing had to have been 10 foot tall to grab that limb. And it stepped up on that bluff about 6 foot in the air. And to do that, you got to be a big feller. Tip up 6 foot in the air, and your body weight go up on 1 foot. So, again, that was consistent with something that tall. And he told me, he said it went off there. He said ever since then, he and Milton never went back ever again to Anacoca Creek. So he said, I reckon you're probably going to sit here and laugh at me. So go ahead. And I said, Uncle Lewis, I ain't going to laugh at you. And I went ahead and I said, let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you a story, son, that I seen back in 75 in Arkansas. And I told him my encounter. That old man almost broke down and cried. The relief out of him hearing that from me was, I guess I ain't crazy. I said, no, sir, I promise you ain't crazy. These things evidently exist, and there's more than one, obviously. And so he was so relieved of that. It just, he almost wanted to hug my neck. I said, man. I said, but, and so it kind of felt good a little bit for me to get it off my chest. But I still was hesitant to tell anybody else about it. And then finally, later on, of course, Miguel got a hold of me, and I told it to him, and that's when I told my wife and my sons. And so, of course, and it's hard for them to grasp it. It is. It is. My son, both my boys, they understood it, but they both looked, and we never seen one before, so we don't know. But they believe there's other stuff out there. They believe in UFOs and everything. They've seen them before, but they just, So I said, I understand. Look, I don't expect you to go ahead and take it to heart. I mean, it just. I didn't believe these things existed either till I saw them. And seeing was believing for me. So I said, but I'm just telling you, I said, your old man seen this and had and experienced this, and that's all I can tell you. So, but and they believe it. It's just understanding the concreteness of it because seeing one themselves. But in any case, and my oldest son, who I was telling you about, of course, he plays with Caden Gillard Band out in Tennessee. And he lives out in Tennessee, and he called me up. He said, Pop, he said, look, he said, there's Bigfoot conferences all over Tennessee, everywhere you go. He said, these things are real, I guess, huh? I said, I'm telling you, son, I've been telling you. You know, so anyway, so yeah, I mean, and because people are seeing these things. But in any case, and then as far as out here, there's sightings all over here. My wife's sister, her boyfriend, which was, I mean, they were living together for years, so I called him brother-in-law. But anyway, and we were sitting on the porch one day, and mom and daddy, so he went ahead and he told me, he said, Steve, he said, I don't seen one over here over River Dam, which is about 15 miles east or west of here, and it's a swampy area over there. I would think one would live out there for sure. And he said he seen one night out there, and he said he never went back there either. He used to set traps out there. And so I was surprised that all the people coming out forward talking about they've seen these things. Now, there's sightings out in Sabine River, which is not about 15, 20 miles from here. Sabine River, there's sightings everywhere. Sabine River separates Louisiana from Texas. And there's sightings all through there, all over the place. Now, there's so many sightings in that area that Toledo Bend, which is a big reservoir right there that comes off, that's where Sabine River comes off of, is outside of communities called Manny and Zwolle, Louisiana. Zwolle, Louisiana is about 45 miles from here, about north of here. And the mayor of Zwolle notified and contacted the BRFO and telling them, we got Bigfoot sightings down here everywhere. Y'all get someone down here. And they actually sent Finding Bigfoot show down there to go ahead and do one of their shows down in Zwolle and talk to all the people who've seen the creatures out there. So there's sightings all through here. I have not seen one here in Louisiana. I wish I could say I did, but I have not. And I've hunted all through these woods. But I talked to people who have seen. Now, I've been asked by people, well, it's a bunch of miles from how about your back door of the next house through the swamp? Why don't you get out in the backyard and go ahead and beat on some trees and go ahead and call one up? And my answer to that is very simple. Son, I did not want to see the one I saw in Arkansas. That scared the fire out of me. I don't think I want to call one up. So
you don't want to give one the wrong impression that you're.
No, sir. Let me tell you this. Okay, they exist. There's no question about that. I don't doubt that a second. I'll argue anyone on the ground about it who says they don't. I know what I've seen. But the thing about it is this. Okay, I'm curious about them. I have studied them since then. I have. But I'm not wanting to see one again. If that makes sense to you, I just don't want to see one again. Now, I don't believe they're violent, but then again, I don't know. I've heard other stories too. So, I mean, I was armed that night. We seen in Arkansas, and the only reason why I didn't unload is because of the fact that creature did not attack us. He did not attack us. He didn't try to aggress us. He ran away from us, so I didn't fire. My girlfriend's daddy, he was so too shook up to fire. He was froze. So, I don't blame him. I was too. But in any case, so I believe they exist now, and these things are all around here. Now, my son had told me, he said, Daddy, he said, there's a Bigfoot museum out in South Arkansas, which is about 3.5 hours from here.
Yeah.
And he said, what? Let's go up there. I didn't know that. So I went up there. And first time I went up there, and I got up there to Falk, and that's where the Buggy Creek area was and everything. And I was talking to the gal up there in the museum, and she said, let me get my husband, and he's the owner, or they own it. So he come out his office, and I was talking to the owner. And I told my encounter, and he said, wow. He said, that is amazing. And you seen it where now? I said, outside Camden, between Camden and Roston. And he said, that ain't that far from here? I said, really? I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know how close it was to the Buggy Creek area. It was close. And he said, I wouldn't doubt you've seen the same creature. Because here's why. He said, Buggy Creek creature was seen in 1971 by 2 sheriff's deputies. He said, and some other people. He said, and that was in 1971. You seen this thing down the road in 1975, just 4 years later. I wouldn't doubt you've seen the same thing or one related. I said, I don't know. I can't swear to I did. I know what I seen, and I know it wasn't human, and it wasn't a bear, and it was a creature. But I'm not going to say it was Boggy Creek monster, but if it was, my goodness, that kind of solidified a lot of things for me. But in any case, so I was really, and then he was very interested in the story, so I gave it to him, and I ended up, he got me in touch with a fella named Lyle Blackburn or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I give him my encounter to him, and he went ahead and said he wants to do a thing on it and all this. And so, he put me in contact with different people and this and that and everything else. But I learned a lot. I didn't realize Camden was that close to Polk. So that really opened my eyes to that. But in any case, so that whole thing of do Bigfoot creatures exist? There's not a question in my mind. I know. I saw what I saw, and it's when I was telling you also when I PCS'd over to Europe. And I was stationed over out in Germany. I was Ansbach 1st Division. We went to in Germany in the military. And let me enlighten you about this. In the military, the German government doesn't allow the American military to build installations like Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Polk, Fort Lewis over on the German soil. You can't do that. So they use old French barracks, World War II barracks, okay, for the American military to use and house in. And I was at what's called McNair Concern outside of Frankfurt. And I was stationed over there. In any case, so the old French barracks are quads. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta Company is what they are. World War II. Hitler used them and all that kind of thing back in World War II and all that kind of stuff when he had control of Germany. So in any case, while I was over there, I cross-trained also as a unit police, which is kind of like MP. And we carried M16s, 45s, everything fully armed, patrolling throughout the area of Frankfurt and Perch and all the areas around there, Offenbach. And we were making rounds, and they took me underground, to about 2 levels down below the concern, which I didn't know existed. And it went down 5 more levels below that. We didn't go the 5 levels down. They were telling me about the 5 levels down. There's a big iron door, and it was chained and locked since World War II. They went ahead and secured them. And he said, they were telling me, the colonel was telling me, he said, look, he said, back during World War II, Hitler had all kind of underground bases and motor pools and all kind of underground tunnels connecting Frankfurt, Wiesbaden, Offenbach, Ansbach, Hohenfeld, everything, all under Germany was by channels and tunnels and everything else and transport areas underneath the ground. That way he can transport items, weapons, what have you, out of view of topside. And he did that. Everywhere he took over, every country he took over, he did the same thing. Underground, he bored these underground things and transports. And he told me, he said, even in Antarctica. When Hitler had his base over in Antarctica, he did the same thing. He underground channels and tunnels and underground bases over there during World War II. And this is, I'm being told this now, not last year or 5 years ago, 1976. Okay, this is a long time ago, a lifetime ago. I'm being told this by a full-bird colonel. And so, and he was telling me about, and I said, man, it just opened my eyes. My goodness. Now, we didn't know about Antarctica back then. Antarctica didn't become a deal till about 10 years ago? This is 46 years ago. And before Antarctica, no one thought about Antarctica except for an ice cube. That was it, that was it. No one ever talked about it. No one knew the military was over there. No one knew anything about anything other than the stories of Admiral Byrd. That was it. Which were kept tight for a long time. In any case, so learned a lot. But in any case, that kind of enlightened me in a lot of things and kind of looking. My eyes were open at this point in time to the world is not what we perceive it to be. It's not. There's a lot of things here we don't know and understand now. When I came out the military, I got married, my wife in 84. I started my career in law enforcement. And during my career, I went ahead and I had actually took reports from a few people who've seen these creatures, these Bigfoot creatures. And of course, they were nervous talking to a law enforcement officer. Well, he probably ain't gonna believe me, anything I'm on drugs, something like that. And I would assure them, calm down. Trust me when I say I believe you. Now, I wouldn't tell them why. I didn't tell them about my encounter. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to talk about it then. But I would assure them, I believe every word they're saying. I knew these things were real. I knew things exist. I knew that for a fact. My whole world changed from that point there. I started studying these. I wanted to know more about these creatures. Didn't want to see one again, but I wanted to study about them. Now, I know I'm jumping around a lot, fellas, and I don't mean to, but I'm trying to go ahead and stitch this all together for you. But remember I mentioned about Granny going ahead and seeing the creature's face in the window, and it had big red glowing eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was watching Discovery Channel, and it was a show about undersea, deep sea exploration and such. And they had sent a micro sub down there about 10, 12,000 feet down in the ocean. Of course, it's pitch black down there and everything else. And they're looking at different sea life and all this and that. And they found these fish, and it showed them. It showed the video of these fish. And I'm looking at these weird looking fish. And of course, it's dark, can't see your hand in front of your face type dark down there. But you saw these fish. And once you saw what you saw first, before you saw the fish, were these red beams of light ahead of them. And then as the sub went around the fish, it showed their eyes. Their eyes were red, glowing red, and shooting these red beams of light out. Their eyes like 3 or 4 foot out there. The narrator went on to say how these fish had developed over the millions of years, whatever, had developed this ability to go ahead and like IR, built-in IR, to go ahead and night vision, to see through the darkness, see food and shelter, what have you. And so, I mean, this answered a big question for me. When I seen that, and he said, and I remember him saying, now that if sea-based creatures can adapt to this and develop this kind of technology ability, what's to say that land-based creatures can't? And that kind of answered the question to be what Granny saw, why these things had red glowing eyes. As I continued to put the pieces of the puzzle together, I figured out these things have some kind of night vision, built-in IR. They can see in the darkness. Evidently, they can see in the darkness. Well, then you take that along with, I believe they're part human. Now, I can't say 50%, 40%, 30%. I believe they're part human, and they're part animal, evidently, obviously. But when you take an animal and you take a human being and you combine the two together, you got the perfect creature, the perfect thing. Why is it perfect? Because humans, well, we're human. We can't run as fast as a deer. We can't run as fast as a bobcat. We don't have the cunning, okay, in the survival type of ability of an animal, okay? We don't have that sixth sense. We don't have that, okay? But when can you imagine taking a human being and combining that human being, okay, with his human intel, along with the speed of an animal, like a deer or a bobcat or a panther, where he can run 40 miles an hour, where he can go ahead and naturally camo in the woods, where he can go ahead and have the human intel plus the animal instinct, you got the perfect creature. And that kind of answers the question of why these creatures aren't being seen as much as people think they should be. Well, we got trail cams out. That don't mean a thing. If they got human intel, they obviously know what a trail cam is and how to avoid them. Okay, and if they have human intel and sixth sense combined with the animal sixth sense, they can tell when a human's coming before a human knows they're there. And on top of that, like I was telling you the other day when we were talking, I promise you, I guarantee you, they're out there in the woods. They're seeing us before we're seeing them. They're seeing us a lot more than we're seeing them. Okay, because they're out there in the wood line. And as a avid deer hunter and squirrel hunter and hog hunter and everything, I can tell you this: when I go out there in the woods and I hunt, and you're looking for sign, deer sign here and there and everywhere else, but you're looking for movement. We can't sense anything without movement. Human beings, we can't sense it. If you got a critter out there in the wood line, and he's blended into the wood line, you can't tell he's there unless he does what?
Moves. Yep.
It breaks. So I'll tell you this. Being ex-military, I can tell you this. Okay, the military's version of camo is nothing more than breaking up your form and blending into your surroundings. That's exactly what true camo is. And if you do that, that's what animals do that naturally. A deer will stand there and freeze. And a squirrel will freeze. Animals will freeze in place, and we can't see them unless they move. I promise you, how many people who claim they've seen these creatures moving and walking, whatever, or behind a tree looking back and forth, how many times they've missed them because the creature's been standing still looking at them, and they never saw it. So that's something, food for thought right there. Next time they go traveling through the woods, well, I don't see one.
Well, I'm not going in the woods now that you said. That you said that.
Well, I'm going to say this. I mean, you get out there in the woods and you're driving through the woods or walking through the woods, whatever. Okay, you say, well, I don't see one, but what you can't say, he doesn't see you and he's not watching you right there. You don't know. You see, so that's the whole thing. When they call him the hide and seek champion of the world, they ain't no kidding. Now, okay, so I studied these things and talked to different people and everything else. And now once I came out with my story, I went ahead and started getting more comfortable, and really looking into it. I live in an area that they're seen all the time. I just haven't seen one out here yet. Like I said, I don't want to really see one. I have no interest in seeing another one. I just like studying about it. But I do know they exist. There's no question. And so I hope that right there, I know I jumped around a lot. I apologize for that. I just tried to go ahead and stitch these things together from 1975 to 2022, trying to get, everything in the middle. But there was another encounter I had. It wasn't really an encounter. It was an experience. I think I told you about this. I'm not sure. It wasn't dealing with a Bigfoot. But in 76, right before I got PCS to Europe, I went on TDY missions a lot. The military's full of acronyms. We got all kind of good things. PCS, Permanent Training Station, ETS, Inter Service. We got TDY, Temporary Duty Status. I mean, it's just that full of them. I went TDY a lot. That just means you're going on a mission. Okay, going on a mission, TDY. I went on a lot of those. Me and 4 other fellas were given orders to go on a TDY mission over to Fort Bliss, Texas in 1976. We reported over there, and we were briefed on mission, given a skeleton coordinates, and the skeleton coordinates is nothing more than just giving you a basic area of where you're going because you're following a chase vehicle. You can never lose sight of that chase vehicle. You have to go ahead, and if you do lose sight of that chase vehicle for any reason at all, that's why you're given the skeleton coordinates. You're to meet them at a perimeter coordinates right there. Our skeleton coordinates gave us basically a brief overview of approximately 27 miles south of Dulce Base, Colorado. We didn't know anything else other than that. We had no idea what we were doing. We were driving 5-ton sealed load vehicles, transport vehicles. Following this, it was a chase vehicle. Chase vehicle was a military sedan. However, it was manned by 2 suits. We called them civilians. Evidently, these guys, what were they? CIA, CID, FBI, have no clue, don't know to this day. Never found out, never know. They had a high security clearance, higher than ours. We had a high clearance. They had a way higher clearance than ours. So we followed them. Again, we had sealed load. We went ahead and followed them from Fort Bliss, which Fort Bliss, Texas is right there on the border of El Paso, Texas. It's right there. I'm sorry. On the border of New Mexico, right outside of El Paso. And so we followed them. It was about 6.5, 7-hour drive. I remember that. We come out in the middle of the desert. We took these desert roads. I'm talking about we didn't see towns. We didn't see nothing for miles and miles and miles. Nothing but dirt roads and desert. Mesas and mountains. We finally come out middle of nowhere, the desert. Now, there was some mesas out there and some mountains. I can't tell you if there's a town other side of that mesa. I can't tell you. We couldn't see the other side of that mesa. But what we could see, desert, mesas, and mountains. That was it. No houses, no buildings, except for we come up following this chase vehicle. to a guard shack in the middle of the desert. That struck me as very unusual. No buildings anywhere else. Nothing. Just a guard shack. About 20 foot, that guard shack was a white stub, about 6 foot white stub. The guard, this is what's really got me strange, struck me strange, come out of that guard shack was a lieutenant. Now, you don't see officers as guards. That's your NCOs and EMs and that kind of thing, like corporals or EFCs, privates, buck sergeants, that kind of thing, E5s. You don't see lieutenants as guards. This was really unusual. And if you ever do hear something like that, it's because there's something highly classified that they're in charge of. They're not they're not trusting to any, to a NCO. So he comes out there, guides the first truck over to the white stub, bumper to the white stub. Next truck goes bumper to the bumper, bumper to bumper, bumper to bumper. So if you get the idea, all trucks are bumper to bumper now, compressed together. All of us, our soldiers are ordered out of the vehicles, ordered to the other side of the guard shack at parade rest, facing opposite direction. And facing parade rest and stand there for a long period of time in that 120-degree heat and starts combat fatigue is not comfortable, fellas. You get chaff real easy, real quick, and you're sweating like a dog because those starch fatigues don't breathe. And we stood there at parade rest. That's right. They did us a parade rest. If they do you at attention over there, then you're going to fall out because your main arteries to your knees will lock up and you'll go ahead and pass right out. So they put you at parade rest. In any case, after about an hour, standing at parade rest, facing opposite direction, curiosity got the best of me. And I had to take a peek back. And I took a real fast glance back and turned back around because I didn't want to get caught. What I seen, the vehicles were gone. Evidently, it was an elevator system of some kind that the vehicles were put on, which made sense why they were bumper to bumper. And they went down, and they were unloaded down there, evidently. I looked down there when I took that little peek, and all I seen was like a basic maintenance facility. I didn't get but a couple-second look. I remember seeing 55-gallon drums, a few tools. That's about it. I couldn't see anything else, but I've seen that down lower level. So I knew that was some kind of a maintenance facility for something. Underground, evidently, had to be top secret to something because of the fact, here it is, middle of the desert, middle of nowhere, had a elevator that you wouldn't even know was an elevator, drops these vehicles down and loads them and brings them back up topside. So evidently, it was no one supposed to know this thing's there, right? Mm-hmm. And having a lieutenant at the guard really puts the icing on the cake. Well, in any case, so we were ordered back in the vehicles. Vehicles were turned around, told about face and back to vehicles. They were back up topside again, all empty, and ordered back inside, followed Chase vehicle back to Fort Bliss, which we did. Got back to Fort Bliss, went back there, topped their vehicles off, went ahead, maintenance them. Our maintenance logs were ordered into a debriefing room. And, of course, we're told the basic speech, you cannot talk about this to anyone. This event did not happen, did not occur, period. Sign your federal documents and all that kind of stuff. All right, so we went through that so many times I couldn't count on a calculator. Any case, so I didn't talk about it really to anybody except for one good friend of mine who worked in Army Intel. And so I asked him about it, and he said, I'm going to check it out. I told him about it and everything. Because he was an Army Intel. I mean, he can figure something out. Well, he never got back to me. And that's when they were on PCS to Germany, and boom, it was over with, lost contact with him. When I came out the military, got married to my wife in 1984, moved out here. In 1993, I went ahead and I met him down in Leesville. And so I was outside of Fort Polk. I ain't seen him in 100 years, so it was good to see him. He's fixing to retire. I said, come out to the house. We'll have some coffee. So he came out to the house, came out here. We sat on the same front porch I'm sitting on right now, talking to y'all in the same rocking chair. And in 93. And he told me, his buddy, I'm fixing to retire and going back to Colorado. He said, Remember you told me about that incident. You got sent TDY over to Northwest up there in the middle desert, and you seen the side of some kind of depot. I said, yeah. He said, I did some homework on that. I got some news for you. Now, understand, this is back in 1993. 1993, computers had just been out a few years then, and the internet, I don't think the internet even really come to life yet. I don't think the internet was, if it did, it was so minute and so limited. I don't think that the information, what they call the information highway for the computers, internet, really didn't start kicking out to about 97, 98 maybe, I think, or later.
Right.
Well,
it was still a back alley at the time.
Yeah. Talking about, yeah. I mean, really, I don't even have a computer in my house, but I used them when during my career in law enforcement later on. But I remember we really didn't start even, using them until the early, around 2003, 2004. We started getting them, so, and I never was no whiz on them. Trust me. I didn't use them unless I had to. But in any case, and in the military, of course, back then in the 70s, we had teletype. We didn't have computers back then for commo. But in 93, he tells me this, and he said, gave me a coordinates, and he said, look, you told me your coordinates was about 27 miles south of Gulf Springs, Colorado. He said, that puts you right about 3.5 miles outside of a town called Dulce, New Mexico. And he said, there's a very new installation out there, secret installation. He said, I believe you've seen part of that installation. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, well, put one and one together. You got out there in the middle of he said, you're 3.5 miles from Dulce. He said, and that's a huge underground installation going on for miles. He said, and you probably saw a maintenance facility part, a maintenance depot, whatever, on the outer end of it. And he said, evidently there was other ones out there too, I said, well, might have been. I don't know. I didn't go to them, but that's the only one I went to. But so I kind of opened my eyes up to that. And I didn't know what Dulce was. I never heard of Dulce. And it wasn't until around 2000, about 2008, 9, maybe, that I even heard about Dulce. That it became a thing to me about, hey, well, it's an underground installation. I didn't even know that, so I said, whoa, I knew about this long before it became an item. How about that? So, but in any case, so that became kind of a neat little thing. So, now if someone asks me, do you think Dulce Base is real? I have to say, I think so, because I've seen something. I didn't see no aliens. I didn't see no spaceships. I didn't see nothing like that. I just seen a maintenance facility depot part of it. But evidently,
think about this. You said you were over in Germany, and think about the relatively short time that Hitler was in power, and just the massive underground facilities that they're still rediscovering now that he built in such a short time, maybe 15 years. So if he did that in that short a time, imagine what our government has done in the last 250 years.
I agree. I can tell you. I can tell you this. Trust me. The military operates on a premise of for their eyes only. We don't know a tenth. I tell you this. In the military, we would work cross-train a lot. Soldiers cross-train a lot. You may have your main MOS, might be infantry or artillery, whatever, but you cross-train constantly. We did a UP, we did a supply. And working in supply for the short time I did, you get the bill of ladings over there, and you figure out, it's not hard to figure out why here your bill of lading is, and you got Uncle Sam is paying $6,000 for a toilet seat. Uncle Sam is paying $1,000 for a screwdriver. Uncle Sam is paying $800 for a hammer. Okay, this is how they pay for all their secret projects. This is how they pay for and bundle all those things. Okay, through a skunk work. This is how I do that, and kind of like under no one questions it. No one questions. Would you pay $800 for a hammer you can get at Tractor Supply for $8? No. I mean, but what I'm saying is this is how you pay for this stuff. Now, when I was in Germany, the colonel I mentioned to you that took me around, Colonel Peterson, he was an amazing guy. One of the best. You don't find full-board colonels as down to earth as he was. Most of them walk around like they got a corn cob up their ass. I mean, hey, Troop, get over here and do this. So this guy was down to earth. Maybe because he only had a year left to retire. Maybe that was, I don't know. But we had an NCO meeting when he came from the Pentagon to take over our battalion in Germany as our BC. And NCO meeting, we all sat around there, getting to know him and everything, getting to know us, or see how laid back he was. So one of the NCOs decides to go ahead and by the way, NCO just means a soldier that's E5 or above, buck sergeant or above. Okay.
A non-commissioned officer or whatever. Is that what this
exactly.
means?
Non-commissioned officer, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, so we're sitting around there talking to him. One of the NCOs says, "Hey, Colonel," he says, "you worked in the Pentagon for all them years." He said, "What you know about UFOs? They real?" And I remember him looking at us, and he said, everyone got quiet because they want, everyone got quiet. They didn't know if he was going to go ahead and answer the question or go ahead and jump down and quote, right? But he said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "Gentlemen," he said, "what goes on in the Pentagon doesn't need Pentagon walls." And he said, as far as do UFOs exist, do alien life forms exist? He said, I'm going to answer it like this. He said, as soon as you ask me that question, the little voice in the back of your mind answered for you. And whatever that said, believe that. And we all looked at each other, and we all looked at each other, well, my mind said it's true. And other guy, my mind said it's true. All of them, our mind said it's true. Looked at us and said, believe what your mind said. So what he was trying to tell us without going ahead and unwrapping the package was, yes, they are real. They are true. They do exist. Which always we know that. I mean, Tic Tac video sightings. Yeah. I mean, it goes on
we're finding that out.
We're seeing things all the time, and it's my my mother. I don't know if I told you this or not. I can't remember. But my mother, when I was growing up, was a big believer in alien life forms, and she believed that she was abducted by aliens. And my grandmother too, both believed it. And up to the day my both of them passed away, they believed they were abducted.
Now, why did they believe that? What happened that made them?
There were several events that occurred. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up outside of Milton Park, California, back in the 50s and the 60s. And so my mother, she died when I was 13 years old. But I remember her, in the morning time, she'd come to me and she'd tell me, she goes, "Steve, they took me again last night. They got me again last night." And, she'd call them the stick men. The stick men, like they had, as a kid, I'm looking at it as a match. The way she described it to me, a match. And if you look at a match, it's a stick with a bubble head, like, drop head. So teardrop head kind of reminds you of a gray, I guess. Anyway, and she told me that took her again. And my grandmother, when she stayed with us before she passed away, she was in the next room from mine. And every night she'd scream. Just, they're coming to get me again. They're coming to get me again. And my mom would get up and run in there. And my dad didn't believe it. My dad thought, he didn't believe nothing. He was down to earth type. Just didn't believe anything went in front of his face. And, but I had seen several things. We had come home one night. This is back in like 67 in town. And we parked in front of the house. It was dusk. It wasn't dark. It was dusk. And everyone's outside on the city block looking up over our house. And about, it was pretty far up there, but it was a long, blue and principal object above our house, just hovering there. And everyone's watching it. It's not just me, it's not my mom, it's everybody on the city block. And it just darts off, gone. So I mean, I don't know if they were coming for her. I don't know if it was just coming around and get somebody. I don't know. But it freaked her out, and she wouldn't sleep that night. So these are things that just really, 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 I guess, I've got my attention to understand. I grew up, I guess, believing in these things, and as far as that went. When I was 15 years old, my dad had remarried, and so we were sitting in the living room, and my stepmom and me were real close, and my aunt and uncle were missionaries in Nome, Alaska. They had come down to visit from Nome, and we were sitting there on a kitchen table, and they were telling my folks about at nighttime, some nights, these big white birds, about 4 foot tall, and walk inside their rooms at the foot of their bed. And neither one of them, my aunt or uncle, either one of them can move. They were frozen. And these creatures, these birds were like 4 foot tall white owls with big black eyes. And also several people, friends of theirs, know were seeing the same thing. So they, of course, being missionaries, and naturally assumed them to be demons. And that was how it was looked at. I kind of brushed it off, till about 2012, 2013, when the movie The Fourth Kind come out. I've seen that. And I guess it's part movie, part so it'd be supposed to be part movie, part real, whatever, but I don't know. But anyway, there was they talked about, all the people talked about seeing these white owls in Nome, Alaska. That's where it was made at. Seeing these white owls walk in their room with black eyes. And when they got put under hypnosis, they come to find out that it wasn't white owls. It actually was gray aliens that was coming in the room, abducting them. And so when I seen that, I said, whoa. It kind of gave me the big whoa experience, because 40 years earlier, my aunt and uncle, I'm hearing about this happening, in 72, and was happening in Nome, Alaska, and the movie doesn't come out till like 2012 or 13. I said, whoa. So when people ask me, you think that's real? I say, yeah. I heard 40 years ago it was real. From actual. So it kind of enlightened me to a lot of things on that, and I kind of, but I mean, all through my life, just different instances. And I was telling you when we talked the other day, I'm 65 years old, look back at my life, and all life is to me is an accumulation of memories and experiences. And as we share them with each other, we share with, hey, what we seen, what we experienced, and our memories. And that's what I'm doing right now, just sharing with y'all memories and experiences I've experienced, I've seen. It just, man, look, I open my eyes to the fact what we see in this world is not just what exists. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more going on here. I mean, y'all have heard of what Skinwalker Ranch and all that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And, what's going on over there. And I'm and so it's, of course, I've never been there before, and I don't think I want to go. But anyway, I'm just saying. But there's a lot of things going on, and we just have to go ahead and, understand. Walk is this, here by the grace of God, go I. That's how we have to live our life, because every day something new is popping up, and we see these things. So that's pretty much my experiences right there, what I've seen and what I've gone through, what I've done. It just, hey, do I believe Bigfoot creatures exist? Yes, I do. There's not a doubt in my mind. Like I said before, I'd argue anyone on the ground if they say they don't. But yet, the night before I seen it, I'd argue with you if you said you saw one. But I just changed my life. I've seen it. Seeing is believing for me. And that's all I can tell you on that. I just
Steve, I've taken, I take notes while guests talk a little bit, and I still I have to go back to how hungry you made me at the beginning of this, talking about how good a cook Granny was.
Southern food, yeah, buddy.
I have that. I have that stuff because if it was maybe that Bigfoot was like, hey, look, Granny's a cook. Maybe she'll leave something I can reach in and snag.
I wouldn't doubt, I honestly, and we laughed about it, but I'm serious.
No,
I
I'm
think
serious.
he came around. He got that smell of that cooking. He said, "He man, invite me in now."
Yeah.
And
I
wouldn't doubt it because that fried chicken, son. Oh my goodness, and what she can do. And when she made green beans and snap peas and all that, I mean, she would just go in there and it was just amazing. It just, oh my goodness. So,
if the way we think, like, that these are part human, part animal, I mean, if they're smelling, if this creature's smelling that, it's just like the rest of us. I mean, you're talking about it and made me hungry.
And you're hungry, yeah.
He's probably like, gosh, lady, just leave me a chicken leg on the window or something.
Yeah, that's it. Hey, but and you're right. You're right. I mean, you're right. I never really thought about it in that angle, but you're exactly right. Thinking about it now, I wouldn't. That's why he came around and peeking in the window at her, in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm not proclaiming anything, but I'm like, look, I'm kind of thinking like Bigfoot a little bit. Like, I mean, that's probably not out of the realm of possibility that he's smelling the food and like, man, I want some of this stuff. But now, did you? So, like when so you're standing there and you guys are all seeing this, right? Like, were you like a little upset at all with that they hadn't clued you in on what? Oh yeah, happening?
I was. Matter of fact, me and him had a talk the next morning when we were fixing to pull that recon out there. And I asked him, I said, look, I said, why didn't you give me a heads up what we were going after? I'm assuming it's an intruder. A fellow we're trying to bring. I did not know what we were going. I didn't have a clue. And if I'd have known what I was going after, maybe it had gone ahead and I've been prepared, at least halfway prepared to see, understand what I was looking at. And he said, well, would you come out the house if I told you what it was we were going after? And I said, yeah. I said, I would have. I have been cautious, but I would have. But it made sense then once I came outside and them dogs was under the house whining, made a lot of sense. They were scared to, and of course the cattle, while they were acting like we were. So evidently the animals all knew there was something that ain't supposed to be. But yeah, I asked him that, and he apologized, and I said, well, it's all good. I said, but man, look, I wish I had a heads up because they all knew. They wouldn't tell me, and I guess he wanted to have all the help he could. So I reckon I'd done the same thing. I guess I don't know, but I still. That really, it kind of got to me, because I don't know. This thing appeared when it jumped over that fence. I have no idea what I'm looking at. My mind is trying to figure out what I'm looking at. All right. And when he stood up, my mind froze, man. I said, what in the hell is this? So, Now,
did they ever say that, had they ever gone out in that same way after the thing before, or was that the first time they had gone out there and tried to confront it?
That I really can't answer that question. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say yes, they didn't, or they did and they did. I don't. But I assume they probably have because it's been around a few times before, obviously. But I don't know if they went out looking for it. I don't know if this was the first time they did when I was there, because they had the extra manpower, or they had before in the past. He never really came out and said. All I know is what Granny said. It's come around a few times before. He told me it come around a few times before. But, they never tried to break in the house as far as beating on the walls or breaking windows or something like that. So evidently, because it wasn't of a violent nature, they figured it was just curious. They didn't know what it was. They had no idea what it was.
And then I'm assuming that's why they had not shot at it either.
Yeah. And to my knowledge, I mean, I don't think they ever shot at it before. Now, I don't know. I wasn't there with them before, but I just know that night I was there, no one shot at it. I didn't, and he was too froze to go ahead and shoot. So, and I'm kind of glad too, because that 410 against that big old thing, if he'd have pissed it off, we'd have been dead. It had tore us up. So
it'd have been just like that scene in Blazing Saddles when Gene Wilder's telling Cleavon Little, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm taking my gun. No, you'll just make him mad. It was Big Mongo Matt.
That's it. Big Mongo Matt. You're right. That's exactly it. I mean, what's he going to do? So I was glad he didn't shoot. He was like I said, too froze to shoot. I wasn't going to shoot because I was trained, hey man, he runs away, let him go. And he didn't try to aggress me. He ran away. So evidently he was as scared of me as I was of him. So I wasn't about to go ahead and fire because I'm thinking if I do shoot, he decides to turn around and it pisses him off. That ain't no good, So.
And I wanted to ask you about the Fort Polk thing. Now, were you tempted? So you've seen one. When the word comes out that another creature was seen, that it's legit. There's something out there. You're not on a wild goose chase.
Yeah.
Were you tempted to tell your buddies I know this is real because I've seen one, or you just kept your mouth shut?
I was very tempted. Let me tell you something. I almost did, but I didn't. I never talked about it. I didn't bring it out. I remember specifically wanting to go ahead and tell them guys, but I knew if I said something, no, I'm not going to do it. So I kept it inside, didn't say it. I just went along with the status quo. As far as, now there was people who saw it, that creature. We didn't see it, but another battalion did. And we heard it got captured. We don't know. I can't say that for a fact. I'm just saying what we heard through the grapevine.
But now, after all these years, have you poked around and tried to see if you found anybody else that's come forward and said anything about that incident or not?
When I did the interview with Miguel, on one of the comments, there was actually a couple of comments, some fellers that come out and said, yeah, one guy said he was there and one of the other battalions, and when all 5,000 troops were out there looking too. I mean, I didn't know the guy back then, of course. Another guy said the same thing, that he heard about it too. So, yeah, there was other people who heard about it. And so it was, I remember
I would love to have somebody come forward and say, yeah, I was part of the unit that captured him. That would.
Oh yeah, I wish that'd be awesome. Neither one of them guys said that, but they just said, one of them said he was there. Another guy said he remembers that when all the troops went through the woods, all 5,000 of them, and hearing about it. So evidently those two, one of them guys said he was from Leesville, which is right there outside of Fort Polk. So evidently, he might have heard about it or whatever. But
he might have heard about it, but not actually been on the base.
Right. Yeah. But one guy said he was. One of the guys who commented said he was with going through there. So. But in any case, I mean, that's and it was a lot of. I think it had I can't remember how many comments on that, 500 and something comments. I couldn't go through all of them, but it was. I think in 3 months it had brought about 235,000 views. It was blowed up.
Well, that's. I mean, and that's the best. And that's what we tell everybody. You're saying life is nothing but experiences and memories and stuff, and you're sharing them, and it does. You look how long it took you to share this experience. I mean, you have no doubt about what you saw and some of the other stuff you experienced, but the fact that you can share it and let other people hear it, that hopefully brings maybe those two dudes that commented on the Sasquatch on Miguel's thing. Yeah. Maybe that will spur them to say, you know what, maybe I should come out and talk about my story. And pretty soon if you have 50 people coming out saying, look, I was at Fort Polk back in and this is what happened. Well, then there's no, then it's okay, let's, what's going on?
But it did. And I remember on some of the comments it brought out, a lot of the people talking about their encounters. They had seen this and that, not at Fort Polk, but at other places. And, so it kind of opened them up to coming out and telling their stories. And that's really good. And I encourage them to come out. But here's something I want to say, and I just want to put this out in the mix too. And I just want to encourage anybody, ex-military, anybody law enforcement background, if you had an experience, come out. And I kept it inside me for all them years, and I regret that. I do regret it. It feels so good to go ahead and get it off my chest. It does. I mean, and I just encourage everyone, to come forward if they had an experience. People need to hear it. People need to hear this because of the fact that they need to know this world is not what we were taught in school. Okay? That it's not. There's a lot more to it than what we're taught.
That's right.
And So we have to go get, people coming forward telling their experiences. I think is really important. I know a lot of law enforcement officers that don't want to come forward because of, they feel it's a credibility issue, and it's not. I thought the same way, but it's not. You have to, just, hey man, look, this is what it is. I'm retired from law enforcement. I enjoyed my career. I do. And I have a lot of friends, and and I have friends in law enforcement that had experiences. And so, I mean, and maybe not so much with Bigfoot, but with UFOs and alien encounters and portals and this kind of thing, and ghosts, whatever, So, I mean, there's lots of things there, but I just encourage people to come forward.
No, Jason, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Steve and I discussed him coming on and doing an episode with the Howler and doing some law enforcement stories.
Oh, that'll be perfect. That will be perfect.
So everybody that's listened to this episode and enjoyed, Steve's telling of the Bigfoot. Wait till we get him and the Howler on the same thing.
Well,
oh yeah, that would be wonderful right there.
There's some encounters there. I'll tell you what, and there's some funny ones. But it wasn't funny for them at the time, but it's just the way it happened. But yeah, I mean, there's I just, now that I came forward and I really started going ahead, I feel so much more comfortable talking about it. And I'm hearing all these other people telling their stories in my family, my wife's family. It's like, wow, hey, you know what? Why did I keep it inside me for all these years?
Yeah.
And it just really makes. So I mean, I'm really. But now, I want to tell you, I don't think I mentioned this. When I did go down to Falk, Arkansas, I found the Falk and go to talk to the owner of that Bigfoot museum over there. He was telling me that, I told him my encounter. He was telling me he never seen one before, but he did hear a few of them out there in Boggy Creek area, and he said that he recorded them on his phone, and he asked me if I wanted to hear it. And I said, sure. And so he went ahead and he pulled his phone out. He said, now tell me if it sounds like the one you heard. Because the one I heard was very specific. It was very, very specific. It sounded, when it roared, it sounded like a panther. You know how a panther screams, like a woman. Real loud, blood-curdling scream. And that ended like a bassy lion roar or something like that. It just rumbled your chest. Elephant or something like that. Anyway, so he went ahead and he played that recording for me. He was out there in Bog Creek, and he heard the howls out there, and he recorded the last couple of them. And when he played it, and I heard that, son, hair and back of my neck stood up. I was like, whoa. He said, that sound close to what you heard? I said, it sounded just like what I heard, son. And I never heard anything like it before. I mean, not since then, until he played that recording for me. And I live out in the woods, like I said. I have panthers and coyotes. I have hoot owls. I got wolves and everything else barking and cutting up back here around my house. In these woods, and I've never heard anything like that before in my life. So that it's got a very unique howl. Now I'm sure they're like that. They're like any other like any other creature or like a person. They may differ in sounds. I'm sure from one to another. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, it's sure. Oh man, that gave me chills. Chills right now. I was thinking about it when I remember that howl. And matter of fact, it bothered me so much when he asked me if I wanted to record it on my phone from his phone. I said, no, sir, I don't. I don't want. It gave me too many chills. I didn't want to hear it again.
Wow,
that's how much it bothered me.
Well, Steve, I'm glad I came across. I'm glad I came across your post, and we got to talk and joined us, because this was great. I mean, I wasn't expecting the last couple parts of that. I hadn't heard that, Jason. So I was as surprised as you were about the secret installation and the other stuff.
It just all ties in together. It makes sense.
Well,
I mean, really
like I said, all the experiences I've been through, in the military, it just, at the time, I really didn't think about it, because back then in the 70s, no one knew about Dulce. No one ever heard about the Dulce Base. I didn't know what it was until 30 some odd years later.
Right.
So it just, I didn't even I didn't even worry about it. And until, my partner came back and with that information in 93 and told me, he said, look, I said, whoa, and then later on, as I heard about the Dulce Base from the early 2000s and such, the pieces of the puzzle came together.
Yeah.
And when you hear about something years before it becomes a public knowledge, it kind of concretes it in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just like the underground railway system that they use in the desert, from the desert to the ocean out west to, I think it goes to, well, it's underneath the airport in Colorado. And people were, years before while they were building that, people used to complain about these booms that were coming from the earth, and it was like rattling things in their house. They were wondering, was it seismic activity? But we got this base that's being made, that was being, blown out the tunnels and everything. So it ended up being that. They found out about a decade later, because nobody would talk about it at the time. It was top secret.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things like that. Exactly. Yeah. Underground. Who knows what's underground?
I know,
we have
exactly.
no idea. So,
and I wanted to make a point before we jump off here. I thought, well, I know how they fund all this stuff other than an $800 hammer and a $2,000 toilet. It's them for the last 15 or 20 years telling you that the post office is losing money. Because we're not losing, we ain't lost a dime.
Yeah.
So when they tell you that the post office lost $8 million or $8 billion, now you know where the money's going.
Yeah, they're losing it. I wish I would find it.
There you go. Well, it's if you look at the past, you predict the future. Basically, if you look at the past, governments of the world control the masses by what? Propaganda, today known as media.
Absolutely.
Today known as media.
Absolutely.
How do you control the masses? And Hitler controlled his masses by that. All the governments of the world control their masses like that. And so that's how you do that, is whether the information, if you want someone to believe a lie, all you got to do is get a media source to go ahead and put it out there, and people believe it because the media won't lie, right? So that's exactly what the mindset is on people. And it's not good or bad, but what it is the fact that's how governments control the masses. And so when the military says, okay, or the government says, well, we're losing money here, losing money there, it's an excuse. It's a cover story. It's a cover up for what's really going on, and they're hoping the masses buy the story. That's basically what it is. You're right.
Well, on that note, Steve, I want to thank you for coming on with us and sharing these experiences. And like I said, I hope we get some response, and that maybe somebody else knows some more details about that Fort Polk episode. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for coming on. I wanted to say that this has just been like hanging on every word. This has been one of the best reaccounts of sightings that I've ever heard. I mean, this is like, wow, I'm enthralled.
Let's be honest, Jason. He had you at biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, he had me early on with that.
That's what gets it.
Yep, that had me early on with that, but that just perked the ears up a little bit.
It was the groceries. That's what did it right there. I got you.
Well, hey, thank you so much, Steve, and we'll definitely stay in touch. And I'm looking forward to getting together with the Howler and doing another episode and getting into some law enforcement stories. So,
oh yeah,
sounds great.
All right, well, hey, stay safe out there, because if something happens to you, I don't think anybody's going to find out for a couple of weeks.
You ain't lying there. Long time.
All right, man. Hey, have a good evening, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Yep. Take care.
Y'all be good now, guys. Thank you.
Will do. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.